A difficult trip to the Canary Islands and a homecoming for Pedri. It was difficult, or more difficult than it should have been. But hey, at the end of this match day, Barcelona will still be atop La Liga once again, so it wasn't all bad. And as far as not being all bad, I really appreciate what was really, really good today. And that is everybody who joined me for the watch along on Big Up. I really appreciate all the support that I was given. And I hope that everyone continues that momentum and joins me on Tuesday for the Copa del Rey semifinal first leg against Atletico Madrid. I had the most people that was ever in a watch along for this one against Las Palmas. So again, let's continue that momentum. But you're not here for Atletico Madrid or watch along stuff. You're here for the 5 headlines, of course. So welcome to episode 662 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dane Hilton, and as I said, this one didn't entirely go to plan, and I do understand the arguments, and I will validate all of your feelings about how Barcelona, if they play like this, they're not going to get a result on Tuesday against Atletico Madrid, and they're not going to wind up being first when all is said and done in the Liga against Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid. I hear all that. I get it, but Barcelona still won 2-0 in games that don't necessarily go their way, and you've got to get those points any way you can. So with all that said, let's dive in. Here are the 5 headlines from Barcelona's 2-0 win over Las Palmas. Headline 1 is credit to Las Palmas. While the rest of the internet is doing other things to get you upset, I feel like for most people, the rage bait that I do best is giving credit to the opposition. So that is exactly what we're going to start to do with this one. Hansi Flick, even with that match on Tuesday, went with a squad that didn't have much rotation. It was Casado in for De Jong. But aside from that, and then Fermin up top as the 10 instead of Gabi or Dani Olmo, who we're not sure if he could play the full 90 if he needed to or start a game just yet. And we'll get to Dani Olmo later. And then Eric Garcia starting at center back. Those are the 3 main rotation pieces, and everybody else from the 11 carried over as expected in Hansi Flick's Gala 11 so far this year. For Las Palmas, they're just hanging on by a thread near the relegation zone, and so they had to go all out. That was probably the best 11 I've seen from them, and they brought it at home, and I do want to give credit to them. I know it frustrates people when I say that, but they had a good game plan going into this game, and they made Barcelona suffer from an early moment in the game. Even the second minute, McBurney, the Scottish center forward, makes Szczesny sweat on this rebound. Bajcetic with the long shot, but even with the early efforts from Las Palmas, I still think Barcelona were on the front foot in the earliest parts of this game. 4th minute, it's Pedri to a wide-open Fermin Lopez. He tries to one-time it, Lewandowski on the pass. It is pretty casual from Barcelona in the opponent's box, which I think was a theme, especially in that first half. For Fermin, I would love if he just puts this one on goal because it winds up going behind Lewandowski, who, to his credit, stayed onside. So if Fermin Lopez had got this one in front of him, then yeah, it would have been an easy tap-in. But that's how it felt for Barcelona. They were going for that golden goal. They were going for that beautiful, wonderful, magical, perfect pass into the net, but you didn't need that. Just smash this one home, get the 3 points, and get out of the Canary Islands, which, yes, eventually that's what happened, but it made us sweat. 14th minute, we saw what is, as Thierry Henry had spoken about on the CBS show with the Champions League, the way to beat this Barcelona offside trap. And that is to basically have a center forward or some kind of forward offside. Have them sit offside and then play the ball to somebody else that isn't that man and have that man not affect the play and then jump back behind the ball to then be an active man. And that's exactly what Las Palmas tried to do throughout this match to some effect. Maybe they didn't score here, but to some effect, you can assume that if players were a little bit more talented than some of the Las Palmas players, no disrespect to Sandro, who's having a pretty good season, or McBurney, who looks like he has a home in La Liga, it just wasn't working for Las Palmas, but it could work for another team. Staying onside led him to a corner by Mika Marmol there in the 14th minute, and he wasn't too far away from it. As I said, on the other end, though, Barcelona, way too many passes in the final third. 25th minute, a little more action there in the early going. Malero takes a long shot on the other side. 32nd minute, it's off a corner. Lamine Yamal goes wide as Fermin won the ball back. Lamine didn't have his shooting boots on today, but as we saw in that photo from Lamine Yamal's Instagram after the game, you'd be hard-pressed to blame Lamine for anything concerning his boots today after Las Palmas did this. Headline 2 is Pedri swarmed in homecoming. Before I do talk about Pedri, I want to talk about Adahana Balde here because he was, again, fantastic. Consistent, good, and to the point where he's building up as if this is Helm's Deep in the Lord of the Rings. For those who've been with me for a while know that I enjoy the Lord of the Rings. He's almost building up this wall, this fortress, that good luck to all the orcs who come in to complain about Alejandro Balde for the next few months, or at least for the rest of the season. He has built up enough of a cushion for me to say, hey, Alejandro Balde, this seems to be his level now. And if he dips from this, that means that we know he can get back to this, which might be his best, or he's still getting better. There were a lot of times when Balde, I felt like in the first half, would have been my man of the match if things didn't turn out so differently there in the second. But for as good as Balde was, there were a few tactical things that weren't necessarily working for Barcelona in that first half that I do want to break down in a tactics board, including why Pedri wasn't finding any space. Give some credit to Las Palmas, but for that second half, I want to break down what needed to change when Dani Olmo came on the field for Barcelona to find any bit of space against Las Palmas. While defending from Las Palmas, this is what you're seeing. Basically, man marking Pedri, right behind him is Asugo. If Balde is not out wide, really keeping on that width, then it's a constant double team, because in this, again, you have the 4 here along the back, and then the 3 and the 3 from Las Palmas defending. Casado is pulled out here, so he can't support Pedri because he's pulled out. If Barcelona were to lose the ball, McBurney down the center, Casado is supporting that. And then you have, again, even if Pedri goes this way, they're handing him off really, really well between the set of midfielders. Again, Asugo is basically guarding Pedri in a man-to-man situation, and then Sandro here out on the wing. So unless you're pulling Sandro to Balde, you're not finding that space. And then for Olmo and Rafinha's got to keep oscillating and dropping in. And then Olmo, you want him to find the space to the middle. And if Barcelona cannot execute here in the middle of the field, it's just not working. So for the too long didn't read on that tactics board, it was all about width. Balde was a bit too central. I know Las Palmas was allowing him to pick up the ball and drive forward. And then Lamine Yamal, same thing. He was coming inside maybe a bit too quickly, and he wasn't just expressing himself out in the wing. I also think that from Gubarcy and Eric Garcia, there were long balls coming, but the diagonals from the midfield weren't necessarily having the same effect. That might have something to do with Casado, who some people characterize him as having a poor game, but I thought he was just fine. Defensively cleaning up everything, at times running with McBurney, who was, as I said, trying to do that false offside, stay offside, come back onside, and tracking him through the middle. So there is a portion of this clean sheet that is deserved to Casado. So I'm going to say this is certainly a net positive game for Casado, even if it wasn't pretty. It's not meant to be pretty with Casado. It's supposed to be efficient. And I thought Casado was efficient, even though on the offensive side of things, yes, he probably could have added a bit more to this game, and he didn't. But I still like the fact that he was rotated for this one, and hopefully De Jong is now at 90% to go against Atletico Madrid on Tuesday. Headline 3 is Olmo makes the difference. I feel like a little bit of a broken record recently with Dani Olmo even telling Hansi Flick, hey, I'm ready to go. Please let me play. And he does just that. For halftime, taking off Fermin Lopez, who didn't seem too happy about it, for Dani Olmo. And Adlai kind of broke down that tactics board. This was immediately what you needed to see. Dani Olmo in the horizontal space, much more dangerous because of how quickly he can turn into the vertical space on the ball, with the ball being played to feet, as opposed to Fermin Lopez, who does have to kind of run onto the ball. And yes, I think Fermin Lopez's passing is a bit underrated, but as far as his dribbling abilities, he's not really unbalancing in between those lines the way that Dani Olmo does. And you saw that to good effect in the second half. There's a little bit of a pull on Rafinha in the box, but the ref says he went down too easily. There is pressure from Las Palmas on the other side. Unfortunately, that leads to nothing, because that would have certainly been a conversation later. Vidi does pull him down, that being Rafinha on the replay, but I also think Rafinha just oversold it a little bit. And Rafinha, let me talk about him real quick in this match. It's kind of the same thing as Casado. Some said that he should have been the man of the match with some key passes and all the like, but I thought it was just like Casado. I think he had a really efficient day. It wasn't his best offensive day, but defensively, as far as keeping the shape and not allowing Las Palmas to score the goals that they have in the Liga, the thing that Barcelona didn't do is score the goals against Las Palmas. Because they're as leaky as any team in La Liga. That's their problem. Their problem is not necessarily scoring goals. They'd be close to the top half of the table if it was just about scoring total goals in a season. So Rafinha, not really finishing the chances, but I thought all around, he had a pretty good game, and I don't want to let his effort go underrated. An example of that offensive stuff not really working today for Rafinha, 61st minute, it's Lamine Yamal over the top to Rafinha, just can't get it on frame. But I felt like all that buzzing did eventually give Barcelona the energy a minute later to score that goal through Dani Olmo. A bunch of different players had to do their jobs to perfection. Casado wins it. Easy little pass to Olmo, finds Lamine Yamal, and Lamine Yamal still picks up an assist. You say he didn't have a good day, still picks up the assist here with the cutback, and then finds Olmo, who gets it onto his other foot rolling the ball across his body, a lot of skill here, and then lets it fly. Nice finish by Dani Olmo, and certainly it is Olmo time. I love it. Dame time, I like the NBA, I love basketball, and Dame time is one of the best things in basketball. So hey, if Dani Olmo still says it's my time, it's time for me to score some goals, love it from Dani Olmo, and I love the fact that Hansi Flick, as much as he didn't seem to get it right against Las Palmas in the first half, was willing to change it up. And while it probably upset Fermin Lopez, he changed it up, went with Dani Olmo, who was the right player for this match, just like he was against Rayo Vallecano, and that changed everything and won Barcelona the 3 points. Headline 4 is too long for VAR. While on the watch along, I stayed pretty consistently calm throughout this match. I really did have that feeling in my gut today that Barcelona were going to get 3 points somehow. Once that goal was scored, it didn't feel like Las Palmas had enough to come back in it, especially when they had less than 30% possession. I thought it was just going to get more and more challenging for Las Palmas. But hey, they still had their little moments that made Barcelona fans sweat. Sandro had one from long that he couldn't get on frame. Then 69th minute, Lamine Yamal could have made it 2, sliding in. And Lewandowski right after that, close on a header, but no cigar. 73rd minute, Lewandowski again skies one over, so all those calls for Lewandowski to not be the starter on days like this when he doesn't hit frame, and he winds up having Kylian Mbappe potentially this weekend close to catching him in the Pichichi race. Well, then you hear the detractors from Lewandowski, but you can go back to so much I've said over the last few months about how I feel about Lewandowski, at least this season. Let's talk about next season over the summertime. But this season, I have my opinion on Lewandowski. I will throw another compliment Balde's way here. He creates that for Lewandowski, getting more and more inventive inside channels with his passing. Good to see. And then the 80th minute, Rafinha showing you why Hansi Flick has given him that captain's armband on the field as the on-field captain, because he gives all-out effort and is the player who leads by example. Beautiful tackle here by Rafinha. Gives a corner, sure, but Las Palmas still had a bit of pressure, and here's the moment that I think people will talk about, but we know, and why I called this a nothing burger, and I don't think enough people know what nothing burger means, so I didn't put it in the headline, but this is a nothing burger on the PK, but VAR took so long with it, and the ref took so long with it, it felt like more of something, but it isn't. There were 3 players offside. It hits his tricep, that being Eric Garcia, which technically is the arm, but ultimately it's given as an offside. And Eric Garcia said after the match, what we don't understand is why they asked the referee to review the handball incident if they already knew it was an offside situation. The play should have stopped right there. But given what happened last week, we can understand why they do it. So Eric Garcia, pretty calm, collected, I think, because Barcelona won afterwards. Those were the words he had. And I was glad that this didn't count against Eric Garcia. We didn't have to worry about all that stuff. Of course, in the points, but just in the sake of Eric Garcia, I spent too long 2 seasons ago even defending what he could be at Barcelona, and we finally see that he is that player. So shout out to Eric Garcia today too. Now, Pau Barci deserves a lot of credit because you have Araujo, you have Inigo Martinez, and you have Eric Garcia, who've all looked better when paired with Pau Barci. And there is a common theme there. But today, Eric Garcia still stood up to the challenge and was really good on the day. So Eric Garcia, good on you. And then headline 5 is the perfect super sub. I had to make a headline dedicated to Ferran Torres, who came on with Frankie de Jong in the 84th minute for Pedri and Lamine Yamal, and immediately showed you that the shark was hungry. There was blood in the water in Las Palmas down there in the Canary Islands, and for as good as Dani Olmo was, Ferran Torres put this game to bed in stoppage time. Las Palmas, they were pushing bodies forward, of course, going for the equalizer, and Ferran Torres does really well with that movement, especially when there's a lot more space. He does well to come back onside to hold his run, and then the giveaway by Las Palmas. Rafinha picks it off on the press. Again, dedication to Rafinha, to the cause, pressing until the final moment. Same with Lewandowski here on this play as well. Lewandowski, this doesn't happen if he doesn't press either. So Lewandowski, Rafinha, they don't lose that hunger in this match, and Ferran Torres is the one who benefits from it. It was a through ball to Torres. Still had to be a pretty tidy finish, and he just slams it home. Good finish from a confident player. A confident player that shouldn't be starting, that should be the rotation forward off the bench, just like he is. Ferran Torres is fitting in like a glove exactly where he needs to be. And for those who may not know their history, Henrik Larsson, look up that name, because Ferran Torres this season and Henrik Larsson back in 2006, I feel the comparisons. I feel the parallels. I don't think Henrik Larsson was the starter. He also had injuries that season, but when it came time for the big moments, the super sub and Henrik Larsson was the guy for Barcelona, and Frank Rijkaard back then, and Ferran Torres might be just what they need at some point when the matches are very important coming this spring. If they continue to get 3 points like this, those matches will continue to be important. These 3 points mean that sitting atop the table, Barcelona can look down at everybody else in the Liga. When on Tuesday, where you'll join me for the watch along, right? On Big Up, you'll join me for that one at 3:30 p.m. on Tuesday. I can only do the first half, unfortunately, and then I got to go call some basketball. But at least for the first half, jump in there with me, and then of course I'll have the 5 headline after that. If you don't want to miss any of the content I make or any of the announcements even, I make posts for when I'm doing the watch-alongs as well. Make sure you follow and subscribe on YouTube, the podcast apps, anywhere on social media, and of course on Patreon. That is where you can really help me continue to make these shows, and that money goes right to me. So thanks so much, as always, and until next time, Forza Barca.